Hey everybody, Justin here with From Zero to Studio, and today I want to show you some tips to help increase your speed and efficiency when programming drums. Writing drum MIDI can definitely be a tedious task. I know some people like to play the parts out on a keyboard, but for me personally, I like to write in all the parts right inside the MIDI editor. That's right, point and click with a mouse. Now you might think that would take a long time with the amount of notes that are played in a standard drum part for a song, but in this two-part video series, I'll show you my process that helps me, on average, finish a complete MIDI drum part in about 30 minutes or less. Let's dive in. So I've got a song open, and I'm going to open Kontakt to create these drum parts. Now you can use whichever drum sampler you want, but I suggest you pick one that you get yourself extremely familiar with so you can start to increase your speed and efficiency over time. And I'm using Slate drums in the Angry Rock kit. I like this kit because it's just really punchy. It cuts through whatever mix or whatever instruments I'm trying to push it through so I can hear the drum parts as we're creating them, and they're not going to get lost in the mix. Now, of course, I can go back and change these if they are staying MIDI triggered for whatever reason. And if we're going to be tracking real drums, this will just be a great guide for that drum part. So to start, I'm going to go back to the top here, and I'm going to draw on a MIDI track on this drum track. And you can just make this as long as you want. I usually try to go for as long as the song. Let's open that up. So my biggest suggestion here is to work on and complete one section at a time. I like to choose like just an intro or just a verse and start out by only working on the kick and snare. After I get that pattern put in there, I'll go back and add the hi-hat or ride and some crash cymbals, and then finally polish up the transitions by adding some fills. As far as fine-tuning any velocities, I like to save that for later, so that way I can just be in a velocity mindset. So let's start by adding this kick and snare on this intro. And note that 99% of the time, your kick and snare is going to be C1 and D1. So I'm going to add that first rhythm for about 2 measures and then copy and paste that across the rest of this. And that's going to give me the opportunity to hear how that sounds across this part. And of course, I can make any rhythm adjustments or additions as I see fit. Let's listen back on that. The idea for this intro is to have this big overcompressed drum part, so just a single kick and a single snare will work fine for that. Let's go ahead and copy these and paste it for the rest of the sections. So right here, we're coming out of the intro and we're going into the first verse, and this is also where the live drums are going to kick in. Now I know that I said I typically don't add my fills until later, but in an instance like this, this is a pretty important transition to bring in the live drums, so let's add that in. Now the live drum pattern from this part is going to be fairly similar to the overcompressed intro drums that we're going to have. So let's start by copying and pasting that rhythm over. So I've got that drum part copied over, but we are going to add some extra kick hits, a little extra snare work here and there. So let's start putting that in. All right, so from here, I'm going to add a crash cymbal, and then we're just going to be grooving on the hi-hat through this part. And remember that copy and paste is your friend here. This is how you're going to speed through these parts. Now that we have the main groove down, let's go ahead and just copy this through the rest of the verse, and then we can hear where we want to make any changes or any additions. All right, so after we've copied that part through the verse, we got to the end of the verse here, and we have a transition going into the chorus. So you see the changes that I made on our hi-hat track? We moved that to an open hi-hat. And then we've just got a nice simple transition, a couple snare hits with some crashes, a little kick snare pattern, and it takes us into the chorus. So now that we're at the chorus, we're going to go through here with a similar process, and I've got a 4-measure section copied from the verse, and I'm going to paste it on this part. So the changes from here, we're going to change this hi-hat to be an open hi-hat. And then the kick and snare pattern mostly fits with this, but we're going to add some extra hits to this part. So let's go ahead and copy that over through the rest of the chorus and finish writing out this drum track. So you can see that I've written all the MIDI data for this entire drum part, and now this track is ready for adjusting and fine-tuning velocities. So if we were just using this for a demo or trying to sketch out some drum parts before going back and recording live drums, this part in its current state would work just fine for that. However, to really transform this drum part into a realistic sounding performance, we would have to go back and fine-tune the velocities. And we're going to cover that in the next video. Now, it only took me about 15 minutes to write out this entire drum part, but as a drummer, I might have a little advantage because I'm hearing a lot of these rhythms and fills before I even write them in. But regardless if you have any drumming experience or not, you really need to familiarize yourself with the virtual instrument software that you're using. It might even help to write out a chart of where each of the notes are on the piano roll, so you can visually see this as a guide as you're writing out your parts. And remember to work in small sections. Most drum parts have a similar pattern that repeats throughout the verse or throughout the chorus. So if you write out a 2-measure or 4-measure part, you can copy that over to the next section. There might be a few differences in the kick or snare pattern on that next section, but with the main part of the groove already there, you can hear the part and know where you need to make the changes. Over time and with repetition, knowing what patterns to listen for and knowing exactly where to click to insert these notes will start to become second nature. Now, as you're working on improving your recording and mixing skills, if you want a guide that'll walk you through every step of the process from songwriting and recording up through mixing and mastering, you can download the roadmap to a radio-ready song. This guide covers 5 steps that'll help you take your song from sounding like a demo to sounding pro, and you can download it absolutely free as my gift to you by going to FromZeroToStudio.com/roadmap or by clicking the link below in the description, and you can start improving how you're creating and capturing your music. Be sure to stick around next week as we dive into adjusting the velocities from these drums. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I'll see you on another video soon.